Good evening, Melburnians. I declare this meeting open at 5:30 p.m. and it is Tuesday the 28th of April. I welcome councillors and management and members of the public attending tonight's meeting, both in person and virtually. I note that the Deputy Lord Mayor and Councillor Louis are joining this evening's meeting remotely. Good to see you both on screen, and I understand we have audio all approved. We are meeting on Wurundjeri Woiwurrung country, and I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the land we govern, the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung peoples of the Kulin, and pay respect to their elders past and present. We acknowledge and honour the unbroken spiritual, cultural and political connection they have maintained to this unique place for more than 2,000 generations. This meeting is being streamed live and the recording will be published on Council's website by close of business tomorrow. The unconfirmed minutes of this meeting will also be available from the City of Melbourne's website as soon as practicable. I request that all mobile phones be turned off or to silent for the duration of the meeting. No apologies have been received. We move to agenda item 2, disclosure of conflicts of interest. If a councillor has a conflict of interest as defined in the Local Government Act, please disclose the type and nature of your interest prior to consideration of the item. We move to agenda item 3, confirmation of minutes of the previous meeting. I call on a councillor to move a motion adopting the open minutes of council meeting number 16 held on Tuesday the 31st of March 2020. Oh, Gladys Liu, off the mark, thank you. And Councillor Camillo seconding. All those in favour of us adopting those minutes, I declare that carried. I'm looking to our councillors joining us online. Do you support this motion confirming the minutes? I can't see your hand, Deputy Lord Mayor. I can now. That is carried unanimously. Thank you. We move to agenda item 4, matters arising from the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any matters arising from the minutes of the previous meeting that anyone wishes to call out? No. Then we move to correspondence and submissions. The following submissions have been received in accordance with Council's governance rules in relation to agenda item 6.1, Community Engagement Policy and Practice Review. We have items of correspondence from Dr Stan Capp, B. McNicholas and David Willis. In relation to agenda item 6.4, review of Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation Planning and Environment Act, we have an item of correspondence from Chris Thrum. In relation to agenda item 7.1, notice of motion, Councillor Camillo. There have been 34 submissions received in relation to this item. Submitted names will be published in the minutes of this meeting, so I won't read all 34 names out. Councillor Camillo, I'm sure you're okay with that. Now we move on to the status of confidential items. Does any councillor wish to discuss the confidential status of any of the confidential items listed in the public agenda? Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just wanted to reiterate my sort of long-standing disappointment with the number of items in closed session. Whilst this evening I don't intend to go through them, I would just like to say I look forward to working with David Thompson in the very near future on reviewing the process by which we can deal with closed session items and bring them into open session, which I think those who are watching in a meeting not so recently, or quite recently, it was what I would call a fairly ineffectual process. So I look forward to us being able to make some improvements there, but I will leave it at that for now. Thank you very much, Lord Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Guest, and thank you for your continued vigilance on that front. We move to agenda item 5, reports from committee, and there are no reports from committee. So we move to agenda item 6, reports from management. There are 4 reports from management. The first of those is the Community Engagement Policy and Practice Review, and I am going to move a procedural motion that we defer consideration of this item. I'm looking for a seconder for that procedural motion. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Guest. I'll now put to the vote that we defer the consideration of the Community Engagement Policy and Practice Review. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried unanimously. And apologies to any members of the public who may have turned up this evening in anticipation of that item being considered this evening. All right, we move on to agenda item 6.2, Tax Equivalent Policy Review FY25-20.
Excuse me, Lord Mayor. Sorry to interrupt, but for a question for the benefit of anyone who may have come for that item. Do we know when that will be rescheduled at this point? Because we didn't have a written motion ahead of us, in front of us. Is that in the motion?
No, I deliberately did not
specify
a date, Councillor Ball, but it would be my expectation, and I'm sure the team is in agreement that it will be at the next council meeting.
Council meeting, not an FMC.
Yeah, I think it needs to come to a council meeting, but if it can come to an FMC, and that no, it can't, can it? No, so it'll be at the next council meeting.
At the next council meeting. Okay, thank you very much.
That would be our expectation as councillors. All right, let's move. We have moved on to agenda item 6.2, Tax Equivalent Policy Review FY25-26. Would councillors like a presentation in relation to this item? No, Councillor Guest. In that case, I call on a councillor to move a motion, which I'm going to request to be put on the screen. And I guess, Councillor Guest, I'm taking that as moved from you. I will second it. Back to you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Under this policy, council's wholly owned subsidiaries are required to pay charges, otherwise known as tax equivalents, to council, and these are equal to the amount of income tax that would otherwise be payable and payroll tax. So this recommendation approves the changes and adopts the revised tax equivalent policy as annexed in the minutes, and we request management to make public the revised tax equivalent policy. And yes, I support this motion.
As seconder, I support it as well. These are largely administrative updates, and I'm sure we'll meet with support from councillors. Any other councillors wish to speak to this item? No. In that case, I will put the motion to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I'm looking on the screen. I declare that carried unanimously. We move on to agenda item 6.3, Audit and Risk Committee Biannual Activity Report 25-26. Would councillors like a presentation in relation to this item? There's plenty in there. No? All right, then I will request that a motion please be put on the screen. That is the one from management. I'm looking for a mover of that motion. Thank you, Councillor Guest. Looking for a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Philip Leilou. Back to you, Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This report takes into account the meetings that occurred on the 14th of November 2025 as well as the 20th of February 2026 and collates all of the various things that are under discussion, the work in progress and what's been achieved. The report would include a continuous improvement plan, progress report, and takes into account things such as the update on the Queen Victoria Market Renewal Program, artificial intelligence policy and strategy, and cyber security biannual updates. There is a lot of ongoing work here at the City of Melbourne that takes place within the umbrella of audit and risk, and I think I'd like to thank everyone that puts in the work. It is very, very important, and along with my fellow council or committee members, Philip Leilou and David Griffith, I would like to support this motion and all the work that goes on.
Thank you, Councillor Guest. Councillor Philip Leilou.
Not much to add except for I want to thank the Chair for writing the summary. She's taken over from, can't remember the last Chair's name, Jess Harris, that's right, yes, and who's been there for many, many years. So Jen, as the independent chair, has done an amazing job in summarising and continuing that tradition along with other independent audit members, but also, again, highlighting what Councillor Guest said as well, fellow councillors, Councillor Griffiths, myself, and also Councillor On Guest as head of the Finance and Governance. It is a 4 to 5 hour meeting every Friday, while Councillor Guest and Councillor Guest has been doing for 2 years. Councillor Griffiths has been doing 6 years. I've been doing it for 10 years. So it's that is a long hours to be compliant. But I enjoy it mainly because we do talk about risks, and it is one that where a lot of management do provide a lot of inputs and other things as well. And so I also want to thank all the areas who've come to present to the Audit and Risk Committee for their insight, and also collaterality with our auditors in getting this right.
Thank you, Councillor Leilu. Would any other councillors like to speak to this motion? I'll just, before we put to the vote, also put on the record my thanks to councillors Guest, councillors Leilu and Councillor Griffiths for the many hours you put into this committee. All right, on that note, put the matter to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Louis online. Yes, I can see you. I declare that carried unanimously. All right, we move on to our next agenda item, which is the review of Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation - Planning and Environment Act 1987. And could I please request that a motion be put on the screen? Do councillors want a presentation in relation to this item? It's largely administrative. I believe this falls within the governance portfolio, Councillor Guest, even though it is the Planning and Environment Act. So are you happy to move the motion?
Yes, I'm happy to do that, Lord Mayor.
And I will second. Back to you, Councillor Guest.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. This report brings forward a refreshed instrument of appointment and authorisation for staff in the Planning and Building branch and the City Design branch. It reflects staffing changes since the last instrument was executed in February 2025. The instrument has been prepared using the MEDICS authorisations and delegations service. There are no financial impacts, no policy changes and no operational changes. So I am otherwise happy to support this motion as it appears on the screen.
Thank you, Councillor Guest. I have nothing to add. Do any other councillors wish to speak to this item? In that case, I will put this matter to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried unanimously. Okay, the next item before us is, we have concluded the reports from management, so we move now to agenda item 7, general business. There is one item of general business, and that is a notice of motion from Councillor Raphael Camillo, investigation into a commemorative and memorial plaques program on park benches. Could we please have that motion be brought on the screen? Councillor Camillo, as the draft of that motion, I'll take it as moved by you.
Yes.
And I believe Councillor Gladys Liu, you are the seconder, so we will go to you now, Councillor Camillo, to speak to your motion.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I'm very, very pleased to move this motion before us this evening. Commemorative and memorial plaques programs on park benches are a feature of many capital cities worldwide, offering meaningful and less personal tributes. They provide families with tangible and accessible way to honor loved ones, transform public benches into space for quiet reflection and remembrance. This motion calls on officers to explore the feasibility of introducing a commemorative and memorial plaque program on park benches across Melbourne parks and gardens, with report to be brought back to Council later this year. And that's why, Lord Mayor, we had more than 33 submissions, and from those even more, but 33 or more were positive submissions towards that. And I would like just to thank you, all the names by just the first name, because this is a motion about to embrace the whole community. So I'd like to thank the submitters, Anastasia, Angus, Anna, Daniel, on behalf, South Bank 3006, David, Diana, Fiona, Georgina, Janice, Jenny, Katrina, Kate, Mark, Nicholas, Nia, Peter, Renata, Richard, Ross, Sherry, Shiboa, Tom, Valda, Venetia, Victor, Greg, and and on behalf of East Melbourne Group 2, Santiago, Sarah, Stefan, Trish, Sylvia, and our garden ambassador from City of Melbourne, Paul Gay. So, Lord Mayor, I think instead to explain with my own words, I just get some quotes from some of the submitters, and I will be reading for you tonight. So, I think is a great gesture and fills the city with an even greater personal touch and sense of community. By embedding stories into the public realm, Melbourne can create more human, emotionally connected space that reflect the people who shaped your city. Community contributes to the upkeep and identity of Melbourne's parks and gardens, including by discouraging vandalism, graffiti, and litter. Honor individuals who have contributed to the life of Melbourne, Victoria, and Australia. Recognize these stories in public space, enrich or share civic identity. It provides a place for belonging for locals and would be for interest for visitors. A memorial plaque program provides a durable, permanent record of person's life, passions, and contribution to the community. I hope you consider how big an impact this small gesture you make to people. A dedication plaque has both an aesthetic and emotional community value. A point of reflection, a moment of storytelling, a connection between past, present, and future. It transforms everyday spaces into meaningful experiences that capture that's special about our city. This program would be consistent and believable with the practice of many other local global parks. A Melbourne bench with a small plaque can do more than provide a place to sit. It can stop someone from a moment, spark curiosity, and open a little window into life of the city. Now, from the two residents group, the East Melbourne group welcomes the opportunity to provide input on the proposed motion to investigate the introduction of a program to install plaques on park benches across the municipality, and South Bank 3006 believes that this proposal merits consideration by Council. It provides mechanisms by which local recognition can be provided for people who have made a significant contribution in a neighborhood, but which may not merit wider recognition by the councils beyond the neighborhood. Lord Mayor, I just pass the voice back to you, and I will be supporting this motion today.
All right, thank you, Councillor Camillo. Councillor Gladys Liu.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Camillo, for the initiative. I think it's a great initiative to do an investigation to see the possibility of what has been put forward. We are the best city, and we are also a people's city, because by doing so, if this goes ahead, we actually can invite all people in the City of Melbourne to put forward their thoughts, put forward their suggestions, and some people may not be great enough to deserve a statue, but there are so many people out there doing good work, needs to be remembered, and really deserve the opportunity to be known by people. And if we can have the opportunity for those names, for those people be remembered, to be valued by having a small plaque in our gardens, the benches, I think it's a great idea. And to do an investigation to see the possibility of such a action, it is something that I think we should support. So I'm 100% behind this motion, and I hope we can have colleagues' support as well. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Councillor Gladys Liu. I am now going to move a proposed amendment to this motion, and I would request that that amendment please be brought on the screen. Yep, that is the amendment. Could you just keep scrolling down, please? Yep. Yes, I'm moving this amendment, and it makes some changes to the motion that has been put before us. I'm looking for a seconder for this amendment. Councillor Philip Leilou, thank you. I'll now speak to the proposed amendment. The idea of reviewing commemorative and memorial plaques program as it relates to park benches is work that I think deserves consideration at the City of Melbourne. I must say from the outset that I, for one, would need convincing of the merits to introduce arrangements which would allow individuals to pay to have people's names put on park benches. But I can see that allowing some scope for sponsorship in this area of a City of Melbourne activity may, in certain circumstances, have merit. And so I do think I want to thank Councillor Camillo for bringing this matter forward and say that with these amendments to the scope of the work, that it would be something, an investigation that I could support. I am conscious that we are a council that has a very big work program, and I think we always need to be very careful about setting, substantial new work for our officers, our team, because of course the consequence of doing that is that other items of work may not be able to advance or may not be able to advance at the same pace. And so what this revised amendment does is just pulls back the scope of the work. It's more a light touch review rather than a royal commission. And I hope that with it being a light touch review, with a report back to councillors, we can do a quick bit of work, seeing what other cities do in this area, potentially providing councillors with some options for us to consider. And then we could, with that information before us, make a decision about which way we want to go as a council in this area. Councillor Leilou. Nothing to add? Okay. I will put the amendment to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand.
You're going to have debate on the amendment, Lord Mayor. Have we missed debate on the amendment?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, let's move to debate. Yeah, it's right. Okay. Would any other councillor like to speak to this amendment? Councillor Rouse.
Yeah, thanks, Lord Mayor. I think you raised some really great points about the workload and process for council officers, and I appreciate you have culled some of the portions of the amendment. However, I probably disagree with you that it largely does remove a substantive workload from council officers. So I would like to see, in an ideal world, that amendment go even further. I think this ultimately asks for a feasibility study, and I think this puts the cart well before the horse, going into pricing models and all sorts of other things that are unnecessary to go and establish whether this is something that we should be investing a large proportion of council resourcing and money into. And I think it would be more responsible for councillors to support something that explores just the feasibility without decrying the very specifics or portions of a program that would be put in place afterwards.
Thank you, Councillor Rouse. Would any other councillors wish to like to speak to this amendment? I'll just exercise my right of response and say it is very much my intention, and the commentary that I'm making clearly in this debate is that I would see this as being a light touch review, and so Councillor Rouse, I want you to be clear that that's the intention of the amended motion. All right, we will now put the amended motion to the vote. All those in favour, please
I beg your pardon,
raise...
Chair. We're not putting the amended motion, we're putting the amendment. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Putting the amendment to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Louis, Councillor Ball, Councillor Liu, Councillor Scott, Councillor Guest, Councillor Camilla, Councillor Leilou. All those against? Councillor Rouse. Anyone abstaining? Councillor Griffiths. Okay, the amendment has passed. That motion on the screen now stands as the substantive motion. Does anybody wish to speak to it?
I'll just ask that my reasons for voting against be documented, please, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone want to speak to the new substantive motion? Councillor Camillo.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just would like to thank the public because I have been living in the city of Melbourne for 15 years.
Hasn't the proponent already made? Is this a right of reply?
Okay, Councillor Camillo. Sorry, I've just been informed. Yes, you can. All right. Do anyone else want to speak to the?
Councillor Camillo, but at the end.
You'll be,
if you wish,
mover of the original motion. You can speak, and you're essentially exercising your right of reply, which will bring debate to a close. So, can I just check if there's anyone else who wishes to speak? Councillor Griffiths.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I welcome the opportunity to make some comments on this motion, and would agree with the comments of Councillor Rouse during the discussion on the amendment, which is that I think that this still leaves a substantial body of work for officers to do, and that I could probably find a way to live with a more pared down version of this motion. But I think that what we've got here is substantive and has moved a long way along the course of predicting the outcomes of any feasibility rather than just leaving the questions open. I want to thank a few people at this point as well. I want to thank the Parks and Gardens Advisory Committee, many of whom have made recommendations, recognising that they had to scramble to do so after they were told of this motion late last week, and recognise the fact that they play a very important and substantive role in how we set out our policies and make considerations about alterations to important policies, which is what this would do if it was followed through, if the feasibility study came back with recommendations to institute the kinds of things that are being suggested here. So to all of those people on that advisory committee, thank you for taking time out from your weekends to make submissions. And also to other groups such as the Friends of Royal Park, recognise that you have a very heavy workload in all that you already do in caring for that wonderful space here in the City of Melbourne, and that you too took time to raise some really important concerns about the matters that are in this motion, and that I know other councillors have taken those concerns on board since they were circulated. I also want to thank the council officers who work in this area for the heavy workload that we've put on them since this term of council started, and the way that they've responded fantastically to that. I think it's fair to say that in this term we've asked a lot of this area, and they've responded magnificently. So to David Callow and the team, thank you for the work that you've been doing in bringing together the Garden City work. Thank you for the work that you've done in organising the 2 ambassadors. Thank you for the work that you've done in getting our flower vote to occur. Thank you for the work that you've done on the Royal Park Master Plan up to this point, which is probably the most significant piece of work that we've got going on at the moment. And thank you for the work that's gone into the preparation of the 13 new open spaces which are in the draft budget at the moment. That is a considerable piece of work. It's what we as a council tasked you with through both the budget and through the annual planning process, and I want to recognise that. I also want to recognise that we've received advice as councillors that for this work to be done, some of that work would need to be set aside. And in my mind, that work is more important than this work at this point in time, and that's why I can't support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. Would any other councillors like to speak? Councillor Dr. Ball.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'm disappointed this motion has been tabled at a council meeting rather than at FMC, which inhibits, of course, public debate. We are elected as stewards of the public realm and public assets and the public interest. And we should not seek to monetise the public realm and public assets, but rather ensure they're safeguarded and serve the greatest public interest. This motion, the background to this motion, is inaccurate in claiming that we currently have no policy covering what this motion proposes. We certainly do. And I quote, "As a capital city, the City of Melbourne is unable to consider personal or family-related plaques or memorials on its land." And further, to quote, "Plaques must be significant to the civic, cultural or political life of Melbourne or Victoria." The policy and application process already in place includes approval criteria and fees charged. That policy, unlike this motion, was subject to extensive community consultation. And it's quite clear that this proposal is contrary to the existing policy. This long-standing existing plaques and memorials policy recognises that public space is finite and precious. And there is not endless space in the public realm. In fact, our council plan seeks to reduce clutter in the public realm. There is a reason we have cemeteries and a reason we have public parks and gardens, or in fact many reasons, and this, I would argue, is not one of them. Our plaques and memorials policy is clear on the gravitas necessary to admit a memorial into a capital city park. We have a memorial, for instance, to John F. Kennedy. And further, the reference which has been retained in the amendment to potential revenue streams is a concern for equity, in my view. I have consulted with one other council which does have these requirements for plaques in its public space, similar to ours, that requires a significant public contribution, a significant civic service and connection to that municipality, but that the fees generated are simply cost recovery, not a revenue stream. Because what is the inevitable consequence is that the people memorialised, if they do not meet the existing criteria in our policy, will be people who can themselves or their families afford a significant fee to have them named in a public space. So I support the existing policy and the rigorous process in place governing what memorials can enter the public realm. I regret this matter has not been developed with regard to that existing policy, and that our experts serving their involuntary capacity on our Parks and Gardens Advisory Committee have not been consulted. And so I can't support this motion.
All right, thank you, Councillor Ball. Councillor Leilou.
Can I just check I'm still allowed to speak?
Yes, you can.
Okay,
you
so
spoke to, well, we voted on the
I actually didn't
amendment,
speak.
but now you're speaking to the substantive.
Yeah, no, I wasn't going to, but I think given what's been debated, I feel I do need to say something. I'm happy to support this because there are other things I'm very passionate about. For example, I've spoken to groups of the victims of violent. I can't remember the specific group at the moment, who wanted a plaque and statue in recognition of all the victims of who've been murdered against her violent crimes and everything. And the only memorial and plaque they have is actually just a very small things underneath a tree. And I've always been going through this process, and so I do recognise that. I think for people it is important. I do think it is okay for council to make money. I'm an unashamed capitalist. I think that there are things we need to pay for it, and money don't grow on trees, and certainly does not come anywhere else except for the good people of Melbourne. And so, if there is an extra revenue which they wish to put their money in recognition of their loved ones, I do think that we do that to buildings. There are many buildings named after different people. We also do the same for First Nation people, right? We also do for women. We do for many other things. So if we take the approach where we say, well, we don't do that for any particular certain groups or anything, then we need to look at everything, not just particularly people who decide to pay, because they are Melburnians, right? They have contributed in some ways, and if they want to be recognised in some ways by a bench or other ways, they should be able to. And I for one, is, we don't live in an oppressed state. We live in a one where we can actually debate on that. But I think Councillor Ball does raise a very good point about the fact that we have a policy. I think, Councillor Camello, when this review does come back, we should actually look at changing the policy to fit what is coming back, because then we can then absolutely ensure that policy is aligned with what the views of Melbourne is. And so I look forward to the review. I look forward to potentially reviewing the policy all over again, because I definitely I've wanted to change that policy for a long, long time as well. And I look forward to what comes out of that.
All right, thank you, Councillor Leilu. Do any other councillors wish to speak to this? Councillor Kimberley, do you want to exercise your right of... Councillor Rouse, over to you.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. And I think we are of similar mind based off your previous comments. If Council was to support the motion as it sits on the screen at the moment, that would be committing officers to a large body of work with, as far as I can see, 9 key areas to focus on. If the feasibility falls down at any one of those points, they would still be committed to go through the very extensive process, which probably requires much community consultation and research to put together that report, even if it falls down at the very first element of the criteria. I think that is irresponsible of us to commit council to that body of work if there is a far more effective and a better use of council resources. But as we said that before. I think there's some really important points that have been raised as well around this proposal doesn't add anything new. The current policy allows for these sorts of processes with the public to be considered, and there is a mechanism, a clear and transparent mechanism for making sure they can be dealt with. So this would be in clear opposition to the current established policy as well. I really do appreciate the people that have written in to give their point of view on the motion. And I think the takeaway from them is not that this is a good idea as it sits written on the screen, but I think it raises an important point that we as a city council, as a city, need to get better at telling our story. And I'd like to thank the people who submitted suggesting some of the stories that we can or should be telling. And I think that is a great takeaway that the City of Melbourne can be taking from tonight's discussion. Like you, I have issues that the wording currently presupposes the outcome, and this would put us to a formal process that duplicates the existing policy or cuts across it. The current policy requires monuments or plaques have a connection to place. Bench plaques does not meet that criteria at all. The current policy maintains that memorials and plaques must be of significance to the community and limited to those that have contributed. This current policy would allow me to put up one for Gam Gam because she made nice scones. And whilst that might mean a lot to me, and I do not reject anyone's reasons for wanting to do that, that does not mean anything to the larger and broader community. And I think as a council, we have a obligation to serve the larger and broader community, not individuals within that. The other issue I have with is in the pricing models an equity that in itself is self-contradictory, that ultimately means those who get recognised are those who can afford to pay. And once again, commonplace in these sorts of things is you recognise the awardee and the person who's funding it as well, and that risks turning our park benches into commercial assets for businesses as well. I also am concerned because, as has been pointed out, this is something that has occurred around the world to broad success in some areas, such as Centennial Park, in New York, in Central Park, and in London as well. The difference there is that is not local government administering that. That is independent trusts whose duty of care is the obligation to the financial success of those parks. It is not a level of government that has been entrusted with public money and maintaining equality across the community. The other issue I have with this is if you look into many examples of where this has been done by councils and city governments around the world, it has in many, many, many examples failed, been scaled back, been rejected, caused far more problems than it initially tried to solve. And I think that is a fundamental issue that this motion does not call for a review of those examples, because we can learn from the areas where others have failed, and we can do so to save a lot of time, effort and money for us as well. And I think that would be a much more responsible pathway for us to take. So as it sits at the moment, as is written in the current motion, I think it would be irresponsible for me to be able to support that when I can see a far more cost-effective manner for the council to proceed.
All right, thank you, Councillor Rouse, for that contribution. Does any other councillor wish to speak before we give council?
No grandstanding from me tonight, thank you.
So, Councillor Rouse, I think you had something further to...
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Based off that, I'd like to propose an amendment, if I may.
You can, yes. Do you wish to dictate what your amendment would be? So
I believe council business has access to it.
Okay. I thought you were about to verbalise a proposed amendment. My apologies.
Still a junior council. I'm not that good yet, mate. You need to call for a seconder, of course, before I launch into it. In summary, this removes the lengthy conditions.
Scroll down, please, so councillors can see the... So taking all of...
Removes the lengthy conditions, but maintains the request to council officers to investigate.
Point of order.
Yes, Councillor Leilu.
Can I ask Governance David Thompson, this is no longer an alternative motion because it removes pretty much the entirety of the motion. So it's actually not an alternative, and I thought it would have to be a foreshadow motion. Am I correct in that, or is this approach sustainable?
Yeah, I think you're saying it's not an amendment, it's an alternative motion, in which
Correct.
case
Correct.
it would
Yeah,
be
it's removing the
foreshadowed
bulk of the everything.
In the case it is failed.
It's not contrary to the original motion. It's in
I would like a
keeping with
ruling
the original
from
motion.
council. I would like a
It's
ruling
still
from
commissioning a feasibility study,
the
which
head
is
of
what the original
governance,
motion
David Thompson,
does.
rather than
Ask
from a
David
councillor.
for
Thank you.
his view on that, and I can make a ruling as chair.
Not far.
Through you, Lord Mayor, my reading of the proposed amendment on the screen accords with the comments that Councillor Dr. Ball made, in the sense that it provides guidance for matters to be addressed, but the substantive thing is to investigate the feasibility of a commemorative and memorial park, and it's left to the discretion of the Chief Executive Officer as to what's incorporated in that piece of advice coming back to the organisation.
Thank you, David. Right. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for that advice, David. So I judge it to be an amendment, and you have moved it. Do you have a seconder for your amendment? Councillor Griffiths. Back to you, Councillor Rouse. You can speak to your...
I'll speak to it very quickly. Look, I'd like to thank Councillor Camillo for asking this question and bringing this to a head. I think you mentioned as well, Lord Mayor, this is a good question to have, and this is something that I think is worthy of looking at. However, I think there's a right and a wrong way to do things. And I think the important part there is we're not committing council resources to a long and lengthy process, given that the management recommendation, so the management advice was if we were to accept the motion as it previously stood on the screen, that we would be cutting other things. And I don't know what those other things are. That has not been clear to us. That has not been explained to us. And therefore, I think it would be irresponsible for us to commit to cutting things that we don't know what they are. I think, therefore, I would like to put this motion, so this amendment, to my colleagues. It allows council officers to do the work and answer the question that has been asked. Perhaps even find a problem that we are solving with this without committing us to unnecessary, lengthy work. And it gives us an answer and it gives us a path forward without council waste. Commend it to my colleagues.
Thank you. Councillor Griffiths?
Nothing to add to my previous comments, Lord Mayor.
All right. Does anyone want to speak to the proposed amendment? Councillor Lelu?
Thank you. I think, given the notion, I do also note that council, when we build infrastructure, buildings and everything, it does seem that the current terms of councillors, our names are put onto the plaque. Given that's such an objection and everything, I hope that when they do come to that, if councillors don't want their names on the plaque, they can put their name forward for that, because if there's such a against this particular
Is this speaking to the amendment, Chair?
I'm speaking to the amendment. I do believe that we councillors, whenever we build infrastructure like a community building or a particular thing, we have the great honour of having our names on this particular term to be put on there. So I think in recognition of removing these options, I hope councillors who are objecting to putting their names, having names on memorials and everything, they also should have the option of not putting their names on plaques and memorials as well.
All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Lelu. Does anyone else want to speak to the amendment? All right. All those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand. Councillor Rouse, Councillor Ball, Councillor Griffiths. All those against the amendment. Councillor Liu, Councillor Scott, Councillor Guest, Councillor Camilla, Councillor Lelu, Councillor Louis, Councillor Campbell. So that amendment. Okay, Deputy Lord Mayor, can I clarify your vote there on
against the amendment, Lord Mayor?
Sorry.
Against the amendment.
Okay. So the call, as I just ran through verbally, stands. But thanks, Councillor Scott, for your eagle eye either way. All right, so we return to the amended motion. Before Councillor Camillo exercises his right of reply, I haven't actually spoken to this substantive motion because I only spoke to an amendment earlier. Can I be very clear that this amendment, as amended by me, does not presuppose any outcome, and I certainly would need a lot of convincing to change our current policy, but I do have an open mind, and so that's why I think the investigation is a worthy one. We've also heard some strong arguments about the impact of this potential review on the work program, the very important work program of the council, and I in particular call out, Councillor Griffiths, the work that you called out there. And again, as the drafter of the amended motion, which is now the substantive motion before you, I make it clear that my intention is that this is not a long and lengthy inquiry. It is light touch. This is desktop, not a PhD. And we have wonderful technologies available to us which allow research and report writing to be done in a very effective and very efficient way. And I hope as part of that it includes some comparisons with what other cities around the world are doing, just as you identified there, Councillor Rouse. And so taking all of that into account, I will be voting for the a motion that is before us as amended, as I amended. Over to you, Councillor Camillo.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I just convinced myself again why did I run for council. Today, even more, because this is something so simple. The community has been asking me for more than a year have been here. I go to parks, I go to coffee shops, I'm hearing this week and week. I have been asking, spoke with the team in here, the City of Melbourne. And before the other councillors mentioning here, it's important to clarify to the public that always consult with the management. And the management, even in there, has an amendment that you even move, Lord Mayor, that before it used to be August. So we moved to October to accommodate the requests of management. And also, even this morning, I had another meeting with the management team to double check that motion was possible. And they told the original scope of that was request was not an issue. But some councillors in here today, they want to have their point, and that's democracy. But the most important thing tonight is that resident, that ratepayer, that international student, or anyone in a restaurant, that one day want to be recognized by the members of the family or someone or a multicultural group, one day they can have a chance. I'm not asking too much. The last year, with my own funds, I was traveling to many different countries. I was already investigating, and I went to every single park. I took pictures. I tried to observe people. I don't come in and waste time of taxpayers or the management in here. If I put a motion, has a lot of research, maybe the immigrant in here doesn't know a lot of things. But one thing I do, I consult with people, I talk with people in the streets, and I sit down with the management. So I would like to thank the councillors today for supporting this motion, because this is an act of democracy and prove once more why this new council wants to do the basics right. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
All right, thank you very much, Councillor Kimillo. On that note, I will put the matter to the vote. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Councillor Gladys Liu, Councillor Mark Scott, Councillor Guest, Councillor Kimillo, Councillor Lay Liu, Deputy Lord Mayor, Councillor Louis. All those against, Councillor Rouse, Councillor Ball, Councillor Griffiths. That motion has passed.
Lord Mayor, can I request my opposition to the motion be documented? Specifically, I don't know what will be cut if the motion passes.
Yes, that is a reasonable request, and indeed it will occur. All right, that concludes the items of general business. Are there any items of urgent business in open forum? I don't believe there are, so we will now close the open meeting, and I call on a councillor to move the motion displayed on the screen. Is that the motion to close the meeting? Yeah, okay. I'm looking for a councillor to move that motion. Thank you, Councillor Wrestling, for a second. Thank you, Councillor Griffiths. All those in favour of closing the open meeting, please raise your hand. Councillor Leilu, yeah, that's carried unanimously. All right. Thank you, one and all. I declare the open meeting closed at 6:21 p.m.